everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Transformers Kingdom Core Class Hot Rod. Here he is in his vehicle mode. I think he looks really cool. Before we take a look, let's take a look at the packaging. So just moving the packaging a little closer, this is K43. Actually, this is the last mainline Kingdom figure I need, so that's really, really cool. We have a shot of him running into battle with lots of vines. I think that's the Nemesis in the background, looking very, very cool. We have Autobot Hot Rod, and here is a really interesting little artwork information here. So as you can see, this sword has this really interesting little hilt or handle area that is not on this figure's sword at all. So if you didn't pay attention to the news recently, apparently we will be getting, of course, a Skywarp and an Iguanus that comes with this little piece. So whenever you get those two figures, you can get that piece and attach it to that sword. So that's very cool. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I actually recently did do a video on this and those two upcoming core class figures. So if you don't understand, go watch that video and I will completely fully explain it very clearly. So very, very cool. On the back, he transforms into 8 steps. There's, of course, a shot of his car mode and a shot of his robot mode, and that's pretty much it for the packaging. So let's get into the figure itself. The Transformers Kingdom Core Class Hot Rod in his vehicle mode. Before we take a look at him, let's take a look at the storage. So storage wise, there's actually 2 ways you can store this really cool sword. I'm just going to show that off very, very quickly. So it's very cool. It's nice red and blue. There's actually kind of lightning bolts in it on the blade. I think that looks pretty cool. It does follow suit with the really cool Energon infused style they're going to go with Legacy. So actually this figure will be repacked in Legacy if you cannot find it in Kingdom, so that's pretty cool. So the first way you can store this sword is there is that peg there, and there is a port on the sword. You can just plug that right into place, and there is the first way you can store it. So, does it look the greatest? No, but does it look bad? I wouldn't say that either. It's kind of in the middle. With these core class figures, I am not really the most strict because they're only like $10, and I don't think Hasbro puts all their focus on these figures. I think they just make them just so if you can't afford the more expensive ones, you can just buy a cheap one just to have something to fiddle with whenever you want to. So I think overall it looks okay, in my opinion. Let me know what you think of this storage in the comments below. Also, this is a sword, and sword accessories are really hard to store really on any figure, from a core class figure to a leader size figure. Really hard to store in alt modes and actually look good and not weird and just kind of obtruding from the figure. So I give it a pass on this. So the second way you can store the sword, I wouldn't say it's the most crazy or mind-boggling or different. This actually was not in the instructions. I found it myself. So you can remove this little fin piece here. It's just plugged right into there, and you can get this port and this peg, and that will just plug right into place, and then you can store that right on top of there. So no, it's not that different from, of course, just slapping it around top, but if you don't want that gap between the sword and the car, you can just have it right on top. I honestly prefer this one over the first one because then there's not a gap, you know. It's nice and flat and level with the car, and it actually does stick forward a little bit more. So if you want to use your imagination of it maybe like ramming into a Decepticon and stabbing it with the sword, you can do that. Something like that. Who knows? So actually this one is not officially in the instructions. I did find this myself. The first one I showed you, we're using that peg. That is the only way you can store it officially by the instructions. I was just kind of fiddling with this, you know, when I first got it, and I was just like, wait, these can plug and connect to each other, and there you go, you can do that. If you have some other ways of storing the sword, do let me know in the comments section below. I would really like to know. These are the only 2 ways I have been able to find and hear about, but who knows, maybe there's some other. But yeah, overall, pretty good storage for Minicon. Not the greatest, of course, but I'm not that picky myself. So overall, very, very cool. One last note of this sword, of course. If you want to make this sword bigger or a little bit more cool and different, if you get the Iguanus and Skywarp figure of Legacy from Wave 1, of course, whenever they're released, you can get their accessories and attach it to the sword. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you skip the intro, go to the intro, because on actually the artwork of this figure's box, it does show a slightly different sword than this one. It's actually an added little hilt to this sword. So if you want it to be a little bit bigger, a little bit more crazy, looking a little bit more powerful, you can get those pieces. Unfortunately, we have learned or seen some images of Iguanus and Skywarp, and their handles, of course, do not color match with that sword. So it will be a slight difference different in color variation, of course. I think Skywarps and Iguanuses, those are a lot darker colors, not red and blue. So if you don't care about that kind of stuff, then by all means go ahead. Of course, whenever I get those figures, I will show how they're implemented into the sword, of course, whenever I get them. But still, I really want to let you know that it's a very cool customizable thing. I actually don't think they've kind of done something like that in a while, so kind of a nice change of pace. So let's get into, of course, the figure itself. So here we have Transformers Kingdom Hot Rod in his alt mode. I think he looks pretty cool. Let's take a look at the details. So we have some nice yellow for the fin there. I think that looks pretty cool. Some nice silver for the pipes. Some black and red for the wheels. Of course, all 4 wheels are the exact same thing. Some bluish white for the windows. Some red, of course, for the base of the race car. Some nice silver for the engine block, or whatever technical term it is. Some nice red and orange kind of mixture there for the flame detailing on the hood. Very classic signature detail, of course, of Hot Rod and Rodimus. And the other side is the exact same thing. So overall, I think it's a pretty cool looking G1-esque, very simple race car mode. Really like it. So let's get into some of the faults or cons of this mode. So if you have not already seen, there is a gap, which is quite unfortunate there. Hopefully you can see it. There you go. So it is quite small, yes, but this section is supposed to tab in. There is, of course, slots and tabs. The tabs aren't here, and the slot is on the main body of the race car. Unfortunately, it doesn't tab in. I have actually been able to get one half of it, because these pieces do separate. I've been able to get one half tabbed in, but not both, which is unfortunate, and it usually ends up just untabbing a little bit later, so that's kind of unfortunate. I was expecting that, because before I got this figure, I watched several reviews, and their figure was just like it, so kind of a downer on that, and yes, I'm not sure it's one of the mini cons, but this I cannot really pass. This is kind of a deal breaker with me, so unfortunate, but of course I will not be storing this in its alt mode, so I wouldn't say it's a deal breaker, but just want to let you know you might get a figure like this with that kind of small gap in there. It's not the biggest one, but still noticeable. But yeah, overall, a really cool looking race car mode. It rolls pretty well. Small gap in there, but overall the details are very cool. Let's head into one quick comparison. I will do several more comparisons whenever he's in his robot mode, so make sure you stay tuned for that. So for the one comparison I'm going to give you, here he is with Transformers Kingdom Core Class Wave 1 Optimus Prime. So we have Optimus Prime there, and of course the soon-to-be Prime Hot Rod is there with him. I think that looks pretty cool. Of course, this one's a little bit higher up, and of course this one's more spread out, a more slender race car. This is a big heavy-duty truck with his gun. Honestly, with storage of the weapons, I actually prefer this one better. They kind of just slap that on the back, and I think that looks pretty weird. I think it makes more sense to have the sword facing forward than just facing back like the gun on Optimus. Just in my opinion, of course. I actually would like maybe if this figure did come with some blaster pieces, so you could put them onto the pipes, but of course, that might be asking too much for a $10 figure. But overall, 2 very cool mini cons. Let me know which one you like, or core class figures, of course. Let me know which one you like in the comment section below more. I think I probably like Hot Rod more. No, he's not perfect, but I think he's a little bit more interesting, a little bit more substantial than Optimus Prime. So there we go. There's our quick comparison. So overall, a very cool looking race car. Let's get into transformation. So for transformation, I am going to take off the fin piece just so I can show you better, because there are some areas where it can get kind of hard to show on camera. Just for your own viewer pleasure, I'm going to take it off. Of course, you do not have to at all whenever you get this figure. It is pretty easy to do without, of course, just not on camera, but in camera, I would suggest to do it. So, took that off there. It's just plugged in on that port right there. So, first what we're going to want to do is just separate this section here. So, as you can see, there is a slot right there, and there's those tabs right there. That is where it's supposed to tab in. Unfortunately, it does not. Just wanted to show you that, but yeah, that is unfortunate. So we're going to split this whole section here. So how this is kind of designed is there is these tabs right here, and they will just go into these slots right there in the legs. Then you're going to move this piece over, and then you're going to move it, of course, up there. Then you can fold this whole section back onto the back of the leg, just like that. And then you're going to separate the legs again, like that. Just straighten these up, and the legs are pretty much done. Unfortunately, there is some kibble on the back of the legs, but I can show that in more detail when it's finished. So we can just get these sections, bring them down. So how that's connected is there is a tab on the arm and a slot in the main body. Same thing on this side, just hinge that down. Same thing, there's a tab there and a slot on the body. And then, of course, to complete the look, we need that fin piece to just open this up, You just plug that into place like that. There we go. And then that will just tab into place like that. And there we have Transformers Kingdom Core Class Hot Rod fully complete in his robot mode. Let's take a look at the detail. Here we have Transformers Kingdom Core Class Hot Rod in his robot mode. I think he looks very cool. Let's take a look at the details. We're going to start at the very top. So we have some nice yellow for that big fin piece there. We have some red for the shoulders, some black for the wheels, and of course some red in the middle. We do have some nice silver for the pipes, some more red for the hands. For the chest, we have a mixture of oranges there, of course, for the flame detailing and the Autobot symbol as well. We have some nice red for the main helmet section of the head sculpt, some blue for the eyes, and gray for the face. And on the back, I think it cleans up quite well, really just with the red. Of course, some of the fin yellow making an appearance there. And of course, we do have some car detailing there with the nice flames. So yes, there is kibble on the legs, but honestly, it's kibble, but it's not ugly kibble, which is good. So moving on to the rest, the crotch is completely done in red. We have some nice orange padding on the legs that are done in red. Some more silver, and of course the wheels there as well. Some more of that blue window detailing from earlier. And the rest of the legs are done in red with some nice sculpting and detailing. Overall, a very well done core class figure, in my opinion. There is some problems with this robot mode, I do agree. I think the joint tightness in this figure is a pretty big problem, mainly where the legs are. So as you can see, these areas here really do not want to tab in. They're supposed to slide into place. They do stay, of course, when you just leave it like this, but if you start moving it around, as you can see, it starts to kind of move apart. Also, this ball joint here, as you can see, is very loose, but of course, these two things they're pretty easy to fix. I am not a very big customizable person on figures. I just kind of tend to leave them how they are. But if you're a person who's okay with doing that, by all means, go ahead. But still, two problems I thought you should know. So yeah, overall, two small problems, but yeah, very cool, classic looking hot rod. Let's get into some comparisons, and of course I will show you with his sword in his hand. I'm just going to move him a little bit further back. I'm going to zoom out the camera because I do have quite a few core class comparisons. So first up, here he is with Transformers core class Soundwave, which is a very good core class figure. And here he is with Starscream. And I think they look pretty cool together. I think Starscream is a little bit taller. Soundwave and Hot Rod are pretty much about the exact same size. I think all it is really just those shoulder pieces there next to his head that give him that height. But overall, I think three pretty good figures. My favorite between these three is Soundwave. Between these three, actually just in general, what is your favorite core class figure that you own, or just in existence, all that have been created? Maybe you don't own it, but you just know it's that damn good. Okay, let's take these figures off to the side, and let's get some more comparisons. Here he is with Megatron, of course, which will soon become Galvatron, his nemesis. Here he is with Vertebrake from Wave 1, and Megatron is from Wave 2. So yeah, overall, very cool figures. So let's take these off to the side. So now that's some pretty good comparisons. Let's get into the accessory and how it's implemented into the figure. So you're just going to get his hand there. Of course, there's a peg and a port, and that can just plug right into place. And there he can wield his really cool sword. Not entirely sure if there is an assigned name for this sword. I know with the Commander class version of Rodimus, there was an assigned name. Not sure if there is one for this or if it's the same sword. Who knows? But still, that looks pretty damn cool. So overall, very, very nice. So let's get into actually a few little tidbits or little features that I have found out myself. So of course these are completely off the books, not in the instructions at all. I just kind of stumbled upon them just when I was messing with this figure. So let's get into them. So one is where you can kind of enhance the articulations. As you can see for the arm, unfortunately this fin piece does sort of get in the way of moving it back. You can move it back, but as you can see it does kind of push against this piece right here. So actually there is a way where you can move this piece and add another way to store the sword at the exact same time. So as of right now, the only way you can store the sword is of course by his hand. That's all I found, or of course by the instructions. But there is another way that I found you can store it. So of course, what you want to do is just untab this section here. You're going to take this fin piece, you're going to close this up, and then you can get, of course, this port and this peg right there, and you can plug that right into place. So there is one minor con to this. This, of course, will not tab anymore. It is not very flappy on my copy, but it will cause a gap, of course, where the fin piece used to be. But this does add several things to the figure. It does make, of course, the fin piece a little bit further back, so you do have better articulation in the arm. Also, you can now store the sword on the back, which I think is a pretty big plus in my opinion. So, of course, you can use that red peg there and that port on the sword, and you can just plug that right into place. So then you can store that on the back. So that is one interesting little tidbit that I found. I just kind of stumbled upon. Of course, I really do not know if they had this fin purposely be able to be removed to do this, or if they just want to remove it because they were worried maybe it would snap off because it kind of is thin and slender and it does stick out in the vehicle mode. Who knows? But yeah, I think that is pretty cool. Again, you do have some slight gap there and slight loosage of that hinge there, so do be aware there is kind of a minus to this. You will lose some connections in the figure, but I think there is a pretty big plus on articulation and storage. So if you want to do that, it's very simple. You really just take the fin from the inside and put on the outside. But yes, very, very nice. So let's get into articulation. I'm actually going to have the fin off just so I can show you the full articulation and its capabilities, just so it's out of the way. So of course you can rotate the arm all the way around. There is a hinge here to a very good degree. There is a ball joint at the hand. No actual hand articulation. The head can rotate all the way around. There is, of course, no waist rotation. The legs can kick that far forward, that far back. There is a knee bend, a knee swivel. It's on a ball joint, of course, so there's pretty good articulation for the legs. And that's pretty much it. There, of course, is no ankle pivots. This is a core class figure, so not surprising whatsoever. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to, of course, fully complete him again. He needs to be complete, so there we go. So yeah, overall, pretty good articulation for just a small little figure. I think that's pretty much it, so let's get into some final thoughts. So final thoughts for Transformers Kingdom Core Class Hot Rod. Let's start in the robot mode. So the robot mode I think is overall pretty good, and appearance-wise I think they nailed the G1S style. Really like the flame detailing on the chest. Very classic to the Hot Rod we know and love. The sword looks very cool with a nice crackling kind of lightning bolt effect on it. So I think that looks pretty cool. I really do like the nice yellow fin on the back, very classic to that as well. Head sculpt overall looks pretty cool. The legs do look pretty cool. Yes, there is some kibble, but I do like how the kibble looks pretty good. A lot of it is the details from the car mode, so yes, it's kibble, but I think it's pretty good looking kibble. Unfortunately, the wheels are mushroom peg wheels, but again, something I can pass on and just not care about because it is a core class figure. I only paid about $10 for it, so not a big deal on my part. I really do like how there's some customization with the fin piece. You can put it on the back, so you can get better range of motion in the arms, and you can store the sword as well back there. But of course, do be aware that will, of course, lose connection between that back piece and the main robot body, so there will be slight of a gap in between those areas. I have not had a big problem with it. There is sort of a gap, but it doesn't have a flapping. The piece doesn't flap everywhere, so it's perfectly fine on my part. How I will be storing this figure is like this, but if you ever want to do really cool action pose or stop motion, that is of course always an option. Transformation is pretty simple. Sometimes it can get a little bit fiddly and hard. Unfortunately, the legs have some pretty loose joints, of course, where the ball joint is for the knee, and that little extra added piece on, so that's kind of unfortunate, but I was kind of expecting it. I watched several reviews on this figure, and a lot of people had that problem with that area. I do like the car mode a lot. It's very classic, very simple. Love the nice silver piping on the side, and they're very classic characteristic of Hot Rod and Rodimus. So definitely stays true to this very classic character that we know and love. Overall, a very good figure. There is, of course, some cons to this figure. I wouldn't say this is the best core class figure. I think probably one of my favorite is Soundwave, but do I know my favorite off the top of my head? Not sure. I'd probably have to think about that. Is he my least favorite? By all means, absolutely not. Highly suggest to get him. Overall, a very good figure. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll see you next time.